What are the functions of money? I need a haircut. And my wife says to me, Imran, I'm tired cutting your hair. Why don't you go to the barber? So I went to the barber. Barber cut my hair. I've got to pay him now. So I offer him a copy of my book, Prohibition of Riba, in the Quran and Sunnah. The barber looked at me with a very strange look on his face. He said, Sheikh, I am afraid I'm not interested in reading your book. How can I pay him? This is called barter. Barter has its limitations. As they found out in Yugoslavia, as they're finding out in Indonesia now, barter has its limitations. What I need is money, something which can function as a medium of exchange. I pay him for the haircut with money. He goes to the market and he buys tomatoes with money. That vendor comes, he buys my book, Prohibition of Riba in the Quran and Sunnah, with money. This is now money functioning as a medium of exchange. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who created us with needs which cannot be satisfied except through buying and selling, must also have created money which can function as a medium of exchange. Sunnah money performed that function successfully. Yes, I know somebody will argue that it was not as convenient to have dates as money as it is to have some pieces of paper in your wallet. I know that argument. But the fact is that Sunnah money functions successfully as a medium of exchange. Second function of money. Second function of money. Every single home I went to in South Africa, every single home, it was a black woman. A black woman. As a domestic servant. Yeah. And she was working from morning until night. For the whole month. A black woman. So I scratched my head and I said, if that is Islam, I need to do some work here. Huh? That couldn't possibly be Islam. In every single home, a black woman, sometimes two, sometimes three, sometimes four, as domestic servants, working from morning to night. That's a recipe for disaster. How much shall we pay her for her labor? One of the functions of money now must be to be functioning as a measure of value. What is the value of the labor of that woman? She works for the whole month, and a unit which she understands is a bag of corn. They call it mealie, the staple diet of the African people in southern Africa. So maybe 40 bags of corn, maybe 5 or 10 she would use for eating, another 5 she'd use for clothing, another 5 she'd use for transport and so on. 40 bags of corn would be a measure of her value, of the labor. But then there's a third function of money. So long as we use Sunnah money functions successfully as a medium of exchange and as a faithful measure of value, so that she always got what would be a just wage. But there's a third function of money. If I work for the whole month and I get a salary with which I can buy a camel, you remember, and I take that money home and I say to my wife, put it away. 10 years later, when I take it out, it should still be able to buy the camel. 20 years later, it should still be able to buy the camel. In other words, this money should faithfully preserve my 1 month of sweat. And Sunnah money did that all through history. Now let me introduce you to something very sinister that occurred. In fact, it was more than something haram, it was riba. But the Prophet had said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, about the riba which would come with Dajjal. What did he say? He said that it will be as difficult to recognize it as it would be to recognize a black ant on a black stone on a dark night. I mean, you don't need a PhD from the University of New South Wales to recognize. The only man who can see that ant, the black ant, on the black stone, on the dark night, is the one who has some light. You don't need a PhD to understand that. Huh? Nobody else can recognize it. Nobody else, not even a PhD from Al-Azhar University. You cannot recognize it unless you have Noor. And guess what? It isn't sold in the stock market. Noor. يَهْدِ اللَّهُ لِنُورِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah guides to His Noor whomsoever Allah wishes to guide. Suddenly, strangely, something happened. Europe is empowered with a power which the rest of the world combined cannot match. If you think this happened by accident, you should go and buy a house in Disneyland. Yes, that's where you should go and live.